the official centers of power in America and Europe are giving Israel a cover to commit any crime they want. This is why when they condemned what happened yesterday, they didn't condemn it as an attack by Israelis, as an explosion. The American president said, "We are sad to see the explosion." Explosion could be like because of a gas pipeline. Explosion could be because of any kind of event. He did not speak about the Israeli responsibility. He is giving the Israelis the cover to commit this massacre. And Macron is doing the same. And the Chancellor of Germany is doing the same. They are giving Israeli the cover because, unfortunately, the Western powers, with them Western media, the official media, the media of the mainstream, is giving Israeli the cover to do whatever they want to do under the pretext of the right of Israel to defend itself. Unfortunately, I can tell you frankly that I know that the centers of power in the West and the media supporting them, they don't see us as humans. They see the Israeli as a human. When an Israeli is killed, the whole world talks about it. But when a Palestinian or tens of Palestinians or hundreds of Palestinians are killed, even the story is not shown on their screens most of the time. And the story is not reported on their social media most of the time. And when people demonstrate in the street in Germany or in France to support the Palestinian people, they are met with brutality by the police. So what the West is telling us, that the Islamic world altogether is something that we do not respect, because this war is central to the Islamic world. This war is happening because of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, where 2 billion Muslims around the world regard it as a holy mosque. But Europe and America, they don't think that they should give any respect to the Palestinians and behind them to the Muslims anywhere in the world. And I see the gap opening and expanding between the people of the South, the people of the Islamic world, and the people and the centers of power in America and Europe. A lot of good people in America and Europe are supporting the Palestinian issue, but not centers of power, not governments, not media institutions, and definitely not the financial institutions in the West. I think the narrative during the first few days was totally dominated by the Israeli lies about what happened, and by the plan of taking the event out of context, as if the region was going through very peaceful coexistence, harmony, and everything was perfect. And suddenly, these mad, crazy Palestinians decided to shatter the peace because they are criminals. They are not humans, they are animals. This is what they said. This is what the Israelis said. They chopped the heads of babies, they burned, they raped women. This was the dominant narrative during the first 3-4 days. And unfortunately, the mainstream Western media repeated the same lies about babies whose heads were chopped and women who were raped. Now, when we see in Gaza, in front of our eyes, babies destroyed and killed and burned and mutilated into pieces, we don't see that in the Western media. No, it doesn't exist. But there is a lot of people start to see the truth. So slowly, the Israelis are losing the narrative in the public sphere in the West, not in the official sphere, in the public sphere. And slowly, people see the reality as it is. And they realize that what the mainstream media is telling them are lies and fabrications, unfortunately. Yesterday, the New York Times, when they published the story, they published it, an attack against Gaza hospital. Today, they are speaking about a controversy of who did it. We don't know. It's a very complicated issue. We need to investigate. We'll see. We don't know how it happened. This is a technique that we know, that when you want to hide something, you hide it behind terminologies like that. Controversy, complications, a need for investigation, a sad event as if it is a natural issue happened like an earthquake. No one is responsible. This is how the mainstream media is framing the story. But definitely, on the other hand, you have free journalists, you have good human rights activists, you have main organizations who are really not part of the centers of power. They are telling the truth and showing the people what's happening. This is why Israel is losing the narrative. And slowly, people are realizing the lies behind their first few days' accusation. We need first to take things into context. The Palestinians, during the last few months, have been warning the world. What's happening in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa is going to create a great explosion. The Israelis started separating Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa between Muslims and Jews, technically, by giving certain time to Jews only, certain time to Muslims only. They needed to do so, and we see the right-wing government talking openly, some of their ministers, about establishing the temple in the place of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and speaking about kicking out Palestinians from their land. So practically speaking, the situation on the ground was boiling. The settlers in West Bank start attacking cities and villages of Palestinians, burning their cars, destroying their homes, and shooting them. That was happening, and the world was keeping silent. So, in my opinion, what happened was expected. It was not a surprise. But unfortunately, because the world is busy looking away, they didn't know what's happening. The Palestinians know because they are living that tragedy every day. When you have people of Gaza in 16, 17 years under blockade, the person who is born in Gaza, when Gaza was put under blockade 17 years ago, now he is graduating from the school. He's thinking also of his future. He wants to go study somewhere. These people didn't see the world, and they cannot go in and out, but in a very restricted environment, and they have no future to do like any human being will do. So of course things were not natural, were not normal. So when something happens like that, happens because of reality, not because suddenly out of context. It has a context. And the world doesn't want to see this context happening in the Palestinian issue because they want to forget about it and move on. So this is why, yes, the scope of it was a surprise. The success, the first 2 days of the resistance to reach into the Israeli lines and Israeli military camps and to do something which has never happened before, it was very shocking to the Israelis themselves, because the Israelis think that their security is beyond anyone's, that they are the most powerful army in the region, the best security and intelligence agencies in the region. No one dares to challenge them. But when these people from Gaza, which has no access to resources, no access to new technology, when they did that, they shatter the narrative that Israelis had in their mind. They shatter the Israeli self-confidence. This is why the Israelis are reacting in a brutal, in lack of strategic thinking, in abrupt way, and in a very angry way, not in a well-calculated way. Technically speaking, on the ground, they are not dealing with it as Hamas-Israeli war. They are asking the whole population of Gaza to leave. We are talking about millions of people. We are talking about 2.3 million people in Gaza. And the Israelis, from the first few days, they start telling the people of Gaza to leave Gaza. And they are pushing Egypt to accept to open the borders. It is a war against the Palestinian people, not against Hamas in particular. And, okay, let us assume that Hamas does not exist anymore. What happened in West Bank, which is controlled by the Palestinian National Authority? 30 years ago, the Israelis they signed Oslo Agreement, where they're supposed to give the Palestinians a state. This year, we're supposed to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Palestinian state. Where are we now? Isn't West Bank under occupation? Don't we have thousands of Palestinians in jail? And West Bank is under the control of Palestinian Authority, not under Hamas. So when we summarize the conflict as Israel against Hamas, it is a big lie. This is the Israeli war against the Palestinians, the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian land, and insisting on ignoring international agreements and international laws and the human rights laws and every convention that the world had about war and how it should be conducted. So, I mean, yes, they want to summarize it in Hamas, but you are destroying the whole nation, you are destroying the whole Palestinian people in West Bank and Gaza. In West Bank, during the last few days, we had at least about 80, 90 people killed. Also, just the fact that you raise your voice, it is an invitation to be shot. We saw settlers living in West Bank, moving around with their guns, shooting Palestinian civilians in West Bank. It was not Hamas. So yes, this is again another war of information. This is psychological war that the Israelis are manipulating the public opinion by summarizing it into Hamas and Israel. The peace is a deceptive terminology used by the Israelis. They told us, instead of resisting for ending the occupation, we will give you peace. And in order to give you peace, we'll give you peace process. And that peace process is not ending. Where is the peace? We went to Madrid conference. We went to Oslo. We signed an agreement with the Israelis. They said the Palestinian PLO, you need to recognize Israel. PLO recognized Israel. They said we will give you only 22% of the historical land of Palestine. The Palestinians said, okay. And the process is supposed to be completed 25 years ago. What happened? The peace process is a manipulation of the Palestinian mind and the world. It is a deceptive terminology. Because if the Israelis really would like to have peace, they would have done it, because almost every condition they put has been accepted. Everything. But never happened. So we are sick and fed of hearing about this peace process. We need to start a new peace process. Really? And then what will happen? So yeah, it is a very, very deceptive. It is something that they invented to gain time, while systematically on the ground are eliminating the population out of Palestine, taking over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and changing the demography and the geography to accommodate only land without population. So Israel becomes safe from all Palestinians anywhere in West Bank or in Gaza or even inside 1948. The leaders of the Arab world, or most of the leaders of the Arab world who are negotiating with Israel and making normalization, they are not doing it for the Palestinian people, of course. They are doing it for their own calculations, for the regime's calculations. They know even their people are rejecting this, but they don't care about their people. Normalization with Israel is to protect the regimes and to give them access to the Americans and to make them look modern in the eyes of the Europeans and Americans. It's not because they want really to secure the Palestinian solution, for Palestinians a solution, or to give their people, something that could help their nations. No, this is why the normalization with Israel happened long time ago. Maybe not publicly, but practically speaking, most of these regimes have connections with Israel. So, in my opinion, let them do it, because this is where they deserve to be, with the Israelis. Let their masks go off and they stand with Netanyahu and shake hands with Netanyahu. But the Palestinians will never accept to stop fighting to stop struggling for the liberation of their land and to end the occupation. They will not. So normalization will not change anything. But yes, now they will be embarrassed maybe in the next few months or weeks to stand with Netanyahu, but I can assure you that from our experience in this region, a lot of leaders already have committed their word to the Israelis. They would love to continue having that kind of cheap, normalizing relationship with Israel. Two scenarios are in front of us, very clear. A, immediate ceasefire or ceasefire soon that could lead to negotiations and maybe some form of truce between Hamas and Israel, exchange of prisoners and so on and so forth. Then another cycle of so-called negotiations, peace process, whatever, international conferences. And, this is one scenario. And I see that the world is pushing to that scenario, or some countries in the region are pushing to that scenario. But on the other hand, there is another big scenario, which is to continue this war and then to expand the war. Because Israel, if it succeeds in eliminating Hamas in Gaza or creating some major change in Gaza, they are not going to be waiting for long until they attack Lebanon. They know that what Hezbollah has is bigger than what Hamas has, military-wise. And they would love to destroy Hezbollah as well, as soon as possible, to feel secure. Of course, this scenario plays two ways. Hezbollah as well is looking at what's happening in Gaza and thinking for itself. Am I going to be next? Should I wait until Hamas is destroyed, or should I step in now? Because if Hezbollah steps in now, the rules of the game will change immediately. Israel cannot fight on two fronts. It's very difficult for them to do so. So it's very, very dangerous moment. If the war expands time-wise and expands geographically-wise, we have a regional confrontation. We have very big conflict for months and years, and you have the Russians going to be very happy as well. The Chinese are going to be very happy, because any war America is part of, and now America is part of this war, because they are sending their ship carriers to the Mediterranean, and they are sending thousands of their own soldiers. That is good news to Russia, good news to China, because it will direct the American energy into this region. And this region has been sucking American energy for decades, through the war in Afghanistan, through the war after that in Iraq. And in the both wars, America didn't win. In Afghanistan, after 20 years, they had to leave. And in Iraq, they evacuated Iraq to Iran. Nothing happened strategically for the Americans. So basically, China and Russia would love to see that scenario. And that is very big scenario. That will reshape the region and will reshape the world. Until now, I see the Americans behaving in a very abrupt way, not well-calculated way. Any strategic mind will tell you America would love to end this quickly now, because they don't want to be embedded in it. But because of the calculations in Washington and the elections of coming elections, and Biden, who wanted to give a gift to Israel. First, his gift was normalization with Saudi Arabia. It did not work. Now he's trying to give them unlimited support to commit any kind of crime they want under the protection of the American umbrella. This moment is very dangerous. It could go anyway, and it could become really something that could change the region and the world as well.